Instantly and easily elevate your cooking with this one simple technique, next on Urban Kitchen Revolution. Hi, and welcome back to Urban Kitchen Revolution. I'm Chef James Hudson. Today we're going to go over stocks. Auguste Escoffier, in his seminal cookbook and the father of modern French cuisine, said that stock is everything, at least in French cuisine. Without it, nothing can be done. So what is stock, basically? Stock at its heart is really nothing more than flavored water. Be it a chicken stock or a vegetable stock, they all have a lot of things in common, and we're going to go over that today. We're also going to go over two different kinds of stock. We're going to do a straight vegetable stock as well as a brown chicken stock, which I find very helpful in my own cooking, especially at home, but also in a professional environment as well. Stocks differ from broths in one major aspect. Stocks are made with bones and aromatics, whereas broths are made with meat and aromatics. To that extent, stocks tend to gellify a little bit when cooled, which also helps to thicken and enhance the flavor and heartiness of the finished product once you start cooking with it. Furthermore, there are basically two different kinds of stock. There are blonde stocks and brown stocks. For our first stock today, the vegetable stock, we're going to do a blonde stock, and then for our second stock is going to be a brown stock. The only difference between a blonde stock and a brown stock is that in a brown stock you roast both the bones and the aromatics, which produce a nice dark hue and a much richer roasted taste and flavor in your finished product. So let's get started. Every stock, no matter what you're making it with, starts off with one basic component, and that's mirepoix. Mirepoix veg is quite simply nothing more than carrots, onions, and celery. Added to that, we add further aromatics and herbs known as bouquet garni. Bouquet garni is nothing more than thyme, bay leaf, and peppercorn. To make a vegetable stock is quite simply nothing more than cutting up the vegetables, putting them in a pot, putting water to cover, and bringing it to a simmer for about an hour. So let's just go ahead and get that rolling, okay? First we're going to cut the veg, the mirepoix veg in this case. So just carrots, onions, celery. This vegetable stock we're going to cook for about an hour, so we want decent sized chunks of vegetable, but not too large. Straight into the pot, skins and all. The skins have tons of good flavor that you want to keep on in your stock. Carrots, again, decent sized chunks. And the ratio you're looking in for your mirepoix is going to be 2 parts onion, 1 part carrot, 1 part celery, approximately. You don't have to weigh them, just a simple eyeball will be more than enough. For the celery, of course, washed, but also use the leaves and everything else, because those again have amazing flavor in them also. For this particular vegetable stock, I'm going to want to fortify it with just a little bit of tomato and I had some mushrooms lying in the refrigerator, some cremini mushrooms that were kind of going past their date, but are a perfect application to add a little umami and a little bit of extra flavor and nuance and oomph to this stock. Again, for the tomatoes, just a rough chop. With the mushrooms, just again, same thing. Finally, a little bit of fresh thyme. A couple bay leaves. I have fresh here, but if you can use dry, of course. If you use dry, I'm going to put 3 in here. If I was using dry, I'd probably use 5 or 6. And then just a sprinkling of peppercorn. I'm going to cover this with water, put it on the stove for a low simmer for about an hour and strain it, and we're good to go. So let's get that rolling. Okay, as you can see, we've got our vegetable stock starting to come to a light simmer now. This is going to be super beautiful. We want to make this, as soon as it starts to just ever so slightly come to a very light simmer, we want to turn this heat down to a nice medium low and kind of just continue to do its thing unmolested, and maybe stir it every 20-30 minutes just to make sure that all the aromatics are being kind of evenly cooked. And that is going to be the end of that story until it's time to fully strain it. Okay, now that we have the vegetable stock rolling on the stove, let's turn our attention to our brown chicken stock. As I mentioned before earlier, brown chicken stock, as opposed to blonde chicken stock, is going to create a more roasted, meatier, and more fortified flavored stock, which I also personally use a lot as a replacement for veal stock, especially in the home kitchen, where I really don't have a lot of access to veal marrow bones. This will create almost as good as a substitute for final finished sauces, which we'll get to later on. So let's start the brown chicken stock, shall we? What I've got here is a bowl full of chicken backs and chicken bodies that I have saved over the course of the last couple of weeks from roasting chickens or making myself or deboning chickens for either chicken thighs or chicken breast. I personally highly recommend buying whole chickens from the store rather than buying already pre-cut, because without that you don't get all this great added benefit of being able to make your own stocks and have these kind of scraps lying around. Of course, in later episodes we'll get into the butchering of chickens, and that'll be super fun. So for the chicken backs, so like I said, I have some chicken backs, some bodies here. What I want to do is cut them into kind of reasonable pieces to expose a lot of the bone structure that's going to have the collagen in it, that's going to create a nice, rich stock that you can have some so again, just some nice sized pieces. I also have some leftover wings and some thigh bones from various projects in the past. Those go in there as well. And the last one right here. Let's take this board over to the wash. And now we're simply going to take a little bit of vegetable oil, maybe an ounce and a half. Mix it up. Just mix that oil, massage that oil in just a little bit. We're not going to add any salt and pepper to this because, again, we want a flavor neutral stock. We can add our salt and pepper later on. This is going to go into a 425 or 220 degrees Celsius oven for about 30 minutes until these get nice and crispy. When that happens, we'll come back and move on from there. Okay, so the bones are in the oven right now. I have thoroughly washed, rinsed, and sanitized my cutting board. And now we're just going to cut up the mirepoix veg, as we mentioned before, mirepoix, carrots, onions, celery, in the ratio of about 2 parts onion, 1 part carrot, 1 part celery. For mirepoix, for a bone-based stock, I like to do about half to 3/4 the amount of mirepoix veg to bones. So here I've got 1 big and kind of 2 small onions, half a stalk of celery, and 4 or 5 carrots, which is going to be more than enough. Since the Since the chicken stock is going to cook for about 4 hours versus 2 hours or an hour and a half for the vegetable stock, we want these pieces to be nice and big so that you catch all the aromatics of it, but you don't cook these to mush while you are cooking the rest of your stock. So some nice big pieces, and we're going to set this aside while the bones are finishing roasting, and after they are roasting, we'll show you, we'll just add these vegetables to the same pan. Use the natural juices from that to deglaze the roasting pan. Roast these a little bit as well, and then we will be making our brown chicken stock. Again, nice big pieces on the carrot so that it doesn't cook to mush in the 4 hours, and same thing with the celery. There we have it, our mirepoix veg is ready to go, our bones are roasting. We'll be back in a little bit to pull those out of the oven and see what we've got. Alright, so the roasted veg is out of the oven and ready to go into the stock pot. So to do that, simply take a spatula, give it a good scrape, and we're going to just pour this right in. Getting all the good brown bits off the pan as well. And into the pot. And back on the stove she goes. I'm going to continue to simmer this for about 2.5 more hours, and when we come back, we'll take a look at the finished product. So as you can see here, we're about an hour in, and we've had a small bit of reduction. It's browning up really, really nice. About another hour, hour and a half, and we should be good to go. Notice the very, very light simmer, just barely bubbling. It's exactly what you're looking for. Okay, the chicken stock's been going for about 3 hours now, so let's see what we've got. So we're going to go ahead and strain it like we did some of the vegetable stock before. With our perforated pan. And just like the vegetable stock, we're going to let this cool down, but right now let's see what we've got. Got a nice brown color. This reduces down, will be super nice, really gelatinous, and absolutely beautiful. We'll put one more quick strain on this later on. But for right now, I want to show you how to store your stock. We have the vegetable stock that has cooled down while we're waiting for the chicken stock to finish. And I like to use Ziploc bags because they're super handy, they stack real nice. These are just going to go directly into the freezer. So a little bit of strained vegetable stock. Of course, be sure to leave some extra room at the top when you close it off so that when it expands, it doesn't break the seal. And just a little bit more. it like that so that all the air is out, seal it off, and veg stock. Of course, don't forget to label, date it, and rotate it through your freezer. In the freezer it'll last for, goodness, up to a year, but I'm sure that you'll not have even close to that amount of time before it's completely utilized and you have to do it all over again. So there we have it, a nice general primer on stocks. Join me next time when we dive into broth-based soups generally and French onion soup specifically. As always, you can find me on urbankitchenrevolution.com, where you'll find episode guides, product reviews, recipes, and general musings. I can also be found on Facebook at Urban Kitchen Revolution, as well as Twitter at James Hudson UKR. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time on Urban Kitchen Revolution. Join the revolution.